So, because there's a lot of people who weren't here yesterday, I'm going to try and get us up to speed in regards to what we covered yesterday. The main topic for today is Daniel 11:40 to 45, but I'm not going to do it exhaustively. I'm going to put it in such a manner that we get the basic structure, because it's difficult to exhaust that topic in an hour. So I'm going to try and get us the basic topic so that we get the structure. So if you turn to your notes on page 1 of your notes, this is revision for those who came here yesterday. We put some things in place on the board yesterday in regards to some basic concepts that we need to grasp in this message. Now, the presentations that we are doing hinge upon one another. The presentations that Brother Ryan is doing, that Brother Tendai is doing, impact my presentations and vice versa. So, I put on the board yesterday some of at least 5 basic things that we need to know in order to have a foundational understanding of this message. Thing number 1 that I put on the board, does anyone remember?
Not in your order.
Yeah, even if it's not in order. Uncle Tabo said Ezra 7:9. Ezra 7:9. The reason? You can't see. I don't like the black. Okay. Yeah, my brother said number 4. It's getting faint, sir. There's no place at all.
There's another place.
It's bad now.
Oh, it's better.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, people can't see green as well. Okay, what else is getting the marker? Let's proceed. Ezra 7:9, the number 4, 7 thunders. Daniel 11:40 to 45. The 4 lines and the number 4. I'm going to project my voice. And the number 4. Right? Those are like basics that we need to know. Various presenters have told us these basics, right? That we need to know. Now, the reason why we need to know Ezra 7:9 is in the notes that we're going to read. Ezra, the discovery of Ezra 7:9 led to the progressive development of the Midnight Cry message by Samuel Snow. And when Sister White is talking about the Midnight Cry, she says that she sees God's people on a path that's cast up, and then she says, I saw an exceeding bright light behind them, but which was lightening the path, right? And then she says, this light is the midnight cry. And in that vision, what happened to the people who did not look ahead to Christ and follow the leading of the light? They fell away into the wicked world below. So Ezra 7:9 is key if you don't want to fall, right? At a simple level. And Ezra 7:9 establishes certain waymarks in the line of prophecy that we need to know. Brother Ryan is going to cover that. The first day of the first month, the first day of the 5th month, and the 10th day of the 7th month. I'm not going to take time to defend them, but I'll just put them on the board and just, have people accept them by faith for now, because I know they'll be defended. Right? It's outside my study, right? So the number 4, one of the teachings about the number 4, Brother Tendai is covering the 45th president, and it's key to have a correct understanding of what he's going to be presenting on based on an understanding of the number 4. I'll give 2 illustrations of the number 4. The 4th angel's message, right? The 4th angel's message, what's the message of the 4th angel? Babylon is fallen, is fallen. So the number 4 illustrates the fall of a kingdom at a basic level, right? Because it's the 4th angel and it's announcing the fall of Babylon. What else about the number 4? The 4th commandment, right? The 4th commandment is going to be the controversy at the Sunday law, isn't it? Right? When you look in the book of Ezekiel chapter 8, there are 4 abominations that are listed. And the 4th abomination is people bowing down to the sun, right? Which is the Sunday law. And the decrees, remember, Brother Tina was talking about the decrees, right? Cyrus, Darius, Artaxerxes. But there came a 4th decree under Nehemiah. And during that 4th decree, the work was completed. So the number 4 marks the conclusion of a work as well. So it's key to have those basics in place. Because I'm also going to touch part of it in my line of study. The 7 thunders is what we're going to look at in the notes. Let's turn to page 1. revision for those who were here yesterday, so my pace is going to be a bit quicker than yesterday. Then I'll slow down as we get into the meat of the day. If you go to page 1 of the notes, the 36-page document, it says this: the time of the end. Daniel 11:40 to 45 is key for us to understand, because Daniel 11:40 to 45 identifies a waymark called the time of the end. And we need to locate the time of the end to be able to understand what Daniel 11:40 is identifying. And it says here, Daniel 12 verse 9, and he said, "Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end." So the book of Daniel is sealed until when? The time of the end, right? And then here I've got a quotation, First Sermons and Talks, page 225 to 226. It says this: Daniel has been standing in his lot since the seal was removed. When is the book of Daniel unsealed? At the time of the end. So here saying Daniel has been standing in his lot since the seal was removed. Is this present, future, or past tense? Past tense, has been, right? Daniel has been standing in his lot since the seal was removed. So when the seal is removed, what does Daniel do? He stands in his lot, right? He begins to stand in his lot. It's key to catch. We go to the next quotation. Testimonies to Ministers, page 115, paragraph 2. It's in the notes. It was the Lion of the tribe of Judah who unsealed the book of Daniel and gave to John a revelation of what should be in these last days. Daniel stood in his lot to bear his testimony, which was sealed until the time of the end, when the first angel's message was to be given. So Daniel stood in his lot until the time of the end, when which message was to be given? The first angel's message. Therefore, when does the first angel's message arrive? At the time of the end, right? Based on the quotation. Other people have disconcerted looks, I'll repeat, right? It says, it was the Lion of the tribe of Judah who unsealed the book and gave it to Daniel. When is the book of Daniel unsealed? At the time of the end, right? And then it says, Daniel stood in his lot to bear his testimony, which was sealed until the time of the end, when the first angel's message was to be proclaimed to our world. So the first angel's message arrives at the time of the end. And when the book of Daniel is unsealed, Daniel stands in his lot, right? Okay, next quotation. This is 7 BC 971, paragraph 4. It's in the notes. 7 BC 971, paragraph 4. It says this: after these 7 thunders uttered their voices, the injunction comes to John as to Daniel in regard to the little book. Seal up those things which the 7 thunders uttered. These relates to future events which will be disclosed in their order. Daniel shall stand in his lot at the end of the days. John sees the little book unsealed. Then Daniel's prophecies have their proper place in the first, second, and third angel's messages to be given to the world. The unsealing of the little book was a message in relation to time. Right? So I want you to catch something here. She's talking about the 7 thunders. And she says what? These relates to what? Future events which will be what? Disclosed in their order. What's one of the characteristics of God that we know? He's a God of what? Order. And remember, Brother Tendai was telling us about the character of Christ from Isaiah, the book of Isaiah. One of the things that Christ is that he doesn't change. Point number 1. And that he illustrates the end of the beginning. And that is the God who's in history. If God governs history and God doesn't change, that means that history doesn't what? Change, right? History governs the future because God doesn't change. The sacred reform movements parallel one another. So if the 7 thunders at some point are future events which are disclosed in their order, we're going to read a quotation which shows that the 7 thunders happened in the past. But here she's applying them to the future. But in one place she's applying them to the past. So you need to know the order which they came in the past. To know the order they're going to be disclosed in when? In the future. Because God is a God of order and He doesn't change. In the quotation she says, the injunction comes to John. The injunction comes to John as to Daniel in regard to the little book. So she's basically saying the same commandment that was given to John to seal up the 7 thunders is synonymous to the commandment given to Daniel to seal up the book of Daniel, right? And what do we know about the books of Daniel and Revelation? They are one, right? Sister White says the same line of prophecy taken up in Daniel is taken up in the Revelation, right? So here she's connecting the work of sealing the seven thunders with the sealing of the book of Daniel. What the context of that means is this: when you get to the time of the end, what's going to be unsealed based on Daniel chapter 12? The book of Daniel. Therefore, simultaneously, based on this quotation, what else do you expect to be unsealed? The seven thunders, because of the connection she made, right? And then she says, Daniel shall stand in his lot. We read quotations that told us that Daniel stood in his lot at the time of the end, when the first angel's message arrived. We know that we're going to show that the time of the end is 1798. This is when the first angel's message arrived in history. Therefore, this is when Daniel stood in his lot, past tense. But in this quotation, she's saying Daniel shall stand in his lot from when she's writing. Meaning that there's going to be a future what? Time of the end, right? So that crushes arguments, right? To say the time of the end is just one thing that runs through history. At one level it's true, but contextually, she's telling you that there's going to be a specific point in time which you call the time of the end. Just like there was a specific point in time which was called the time of the end. Right? So it's key to put those things in place. Right? So, I've got this other quotation, 32 manuscripts. Actually, manuscript releases volume 17, pages 9 to 11. It says the books of Daniel and Revelation are one. One is a prophecy, the other a revelation. One book a sealed book, the other a book opened. John heard the mysteries which the seven thunders uttered, but he was commanded not to write them. All that, okay, yeah, I think this is a different source. This one I want to read. All that God has in prophetic history specified to be fulfilled in the past has been, and all that is yet to come in its order will be. Daniel, God's prophet, stands in his place, which means to stand in his lot. John stands in his place, which is connecting John and Daniel again, right? People can still see, right?
Yeah.
I should come closer. Okay, I'll take one question, then the rest of the questions after. Okay, but I can take this.
Just so that the rest of the lesson I won't be confused. The question is, what does it mean to stand in his lot?
Yeah, to stand in his lot means to fulfill a purpose. When you look at what Sister White says, is to fulfill a certain duty. That's what it means to stand in his lot, right? But basically the emphasis is the standing in his lot, whatever it is, happens at the time of the end, right? That's the emphasis, but yeah, I get you. Back to manuscript releases. It says, all that God has in prophetic history specified to be fulfilled in the past has been, and all that is yet to come in its order will be. Daniel, God's prophet, stands in his place. John stands in his place. In the Revelation, the Lion of the tribe of Judah is open to the students of prophecy, the book of Daniel. And thus, Daniel is standing in his place. He bears his testimony, that which the Lord revealed to him in vision, of the great and solemn events that we must know as we stand on the very threshold of their fulfillment. So in this quotation, Sister White is being specific. In another passage which I didn't put in the notes, she says the seven thunders represent a delineation of events which transpired under the proclamation of the first and the second angel's messages. When did the first angel's message arrive? 1798, GC 356. That one is clear. But testimonies to ministers, right? The first angel's message arrives, yeah. When does the third angel's message arrive in Millerite history? October 22. When Jesus moved from the holy place to the most holy, he sent a third angel with a message to the world. Pardon? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, with the parchment. Okay, close. So here, the third angel arrives at this point, right? But Sister White says this third angel comes at the end of the second angel's message, right? At the conclusion. The second angel's message reaches its conclusion on October 22 in Millerite history. If you're looking at Millerite history, it ends here. So this is where you have the shut door for the Millerites on October 22. Because in Revelation chapter 3, when Christ moves, when he shuts the door, it says, I've set before thee an open door and a shut door. That's identifying the change of dispensation from when Christ is moving from the holy place to the most holy place. So when Christ is moving from the holy place, he shuts the door. But he simultaneously opens the door to the most holy place. So you have a shut door on October 22. marking a close of probation. Because in this history, she says the parable of the 10 virgins was fulfilled. She says the parable of the 10 virgins illustrates the experience of the Adventist people, right? And the Millerites, were they not Adventists? Yes, they were waiting for the second coming. That's what an Adventist is, right? They were Adventists. And it reaches its end here. In the parable of the 10 virgins, that parable ends with a shut door. Right? Remember the bridegroom coming, the door shuts. And Sister White says, it should be GC 346. She says the coming of the bridegroom, Daniel 7:13, the cleansing of the sanctuary, and Malachi chapter 3 are both descriptions of the same event. Daniel 8:14 is identifying unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. And we know that the sanctuary is cleansed on October 22. And she says that it's the same as the coming of the bridegroom. And when the bridegroom comes, what does he do to the foolish? He shuts the door on them, right? So you have a shut door there. So I wanted to put that. So this is the history of 7 thunders. But she says they also represent a delineation of events which shall be disclosed in their order. And then she says Daniel shall stand in his place at the end of the days. We know that Daniel stands in his lot at the time of the end. Therefore, Sister White is telling us that there's going to be a future time of the end after 1798. And when you get to this time of the end, the 7 thunders will begin to be disclosed in their order. Meaning the order has been typified by the order they came in Millerite history. It's going to repeat in our time. And she says that the parable of the 10 virgins was fulfilled in this history. She says that this parable has been and will be fulfilled again to the very letter. But we read a quotation just now where she says that when Daniel is standing in his lot when the book is unsealed, what's opened up is great and solemn events. Right? Remember, there's a quote Brother Tenai read from GC 594, where he's talking about the great and solemn events connected with the close of probation. So when you get to the time of the end, the message that's opened up is great and solemn events that are connected with the close of probation. We're getting it. In Revelation chapter 10, John is told to seal up what? He's told to seal up 7 thunders, right? But when you go to Revelation chapter 22, verses 10 and 11, the Bible says this. It says that, seal not the sayings of the prophecy of this book. Which book? The book of Revelation. Where in the book of Revelation did you see something sealed? Revelation chapter 10. And what's sealed in Revelation chapter 10? 7 thunders. So when you get to Revelation 22, there's a command to unseal the 7 thunders. And then when you read verse 11, it says, for the time is at hand, and it says, he that is unjust, let him be unjust still. Him that is righteous, let him be righteous still. When is that proclamation made? At the close of probation. So the 7 thunders are events that are connected with the
close of
probation based on the context of Revelation 22. We're getting it, right? Okay. So now, in the quotation from manuscripts, from 17 MR, she says this. In the Revelation, the Lion of the tribe of Judah is open to the students of prophecy, the book of Daniel. When is the book of Daniel open? At the time of the end. But we know that there's a future time of the end, which we haven't taken time to defend. But we know that based on the quotations from Sister White, it has to be because she says it. Right? So when you get to that time of the end, there's events connected to the close of probation that are opened up, but also there's a work of the Lion of the tribe of Judah in unsealing the book of Daniel. So the book of Daniel is unsealed at the time of the end, which is 1989, we will show, right? So when you get to 1989, let's show it in the primary, in Millerite history. When you got to Millerite history, the Lion of the tribe of Judah was opening the book of Daniel, right? He's opening the book of Daniel. But where do you see Christ portrayed as the Lion of the tribe of Judah? In the Bible. Revelation chapter 5 and 6, right? He's performing the work of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And when he's doing that work in Revelation chapter 5, what is he doing? He's removing the seals one at a time. Does he do that instantaneously all at once? No, it's a progressive unsealing, right? And James White has a nice quote where he says, what does he say? What does James White say? Oh, no. He says it's nice, right? Okay, we'll skip that one until I remember. But James White has a quote where he identifies that same principle. So, the Lion of the tribe, so the unsealing of the 7 seals begins when what is being unsealed simultaneously. Yeah, 7 thunders. But she says, okay, let me repeat the quote. In the Revelation, The Lion of the tribe of Judah has opened to the students of prophecy the book of Daniel, the book of Daniel. So when the 7 seals are being opened, you are to expect light from which book? The book of Daniel. And the book of Daniel is unsealed when? At the time of the end. So therefore when you get to the time of the end, there's a work of removing 7 seals. And what does the number 7 represent? Completion. So when you get to the opening of the 7th seal, what does it mean? There's a complete opening, right? What's being opened here based on context? It's a message, right? Because it says at the time of the end, knowledge shall increase. And Sister White says that knowledge is the sure word of prophecy. So there's an opening up of a prophetic message that's being done one at a time until you get to when it's fully opened up. This is the argument that we put in place yesterday. So I won't be able to say the other things that we mentioned yesterday because of time. But if we go to Daniel 11:40, right? Let's go to Daniel 11:40. We need to come to the next. Okay, sorry, before you do that, sorry. In Millerite history, there's a quotation in your notes. I pray I find it. On page 2, where it says, both the prophecy of Daniel 8:14.
Okay.
On page 2. It says, both the prophecy of Daniel 8:14 unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed, and the first angel's message, fear God, give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, pointed to Christ's ministration in the most holy place, the investigative judgment, and not the coming of Christ for the redemption of his people and the destruction of the wicked. Right? So here she's connecting the first angel's message with the 2,300 days. Right? That's the message. She says the unsealing of the book of Daniel is the message in relation to time. The Millerites have time prophecies that are open to them, and one of them is the 2,300 days. That was their primary message. And it's connected with the first angel's message. Because when you get to the time of the end, the message that's opened up to the Millerites is the 2,300 days. And the 2,300 days is pointing to the work of Christ on October 22. Because unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. But October 22 is the shut door. So what's open there is events connected with the close of probation. Right? That's what's open there. Because that's where the 2,300 leads you to October 22 when the door shuts. Right? So once they put that in place, go to the next quotation. This is Miller's letter. He's writing to Himes. Right? I'm going to summarize this letter. But Miller is writing to Himes and he's not feeling well and stuff. And when you get to the boldface, Miller says, but all the feasts and ceremonies in the 7th month, or the autumnal equinox, can only have their fulfillment at the second advent of Christ. When you read that whole letter, Miller is saying, at Christ's first advent, he's identifying that the spring feasts were fulfilled. Right? We're together. At Christ's first advent, the spring feasts were fulfilled. Right? And when you look at the feasts, how many feasts were there for the Jews? There were 7 feasts, right? And they were divided into 4-3, right? There were spring feasts and there were autumnal feasts. The spring feasts were Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits. Pentecost, I'm pretty sure it was in the spring. It was in the summer. Yeah, we were discussing that yesterday. Summer, right? But you see this combination, this distinction. The last 3 feasts are what? Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, and Feast of Tabernacles. These all took place in the autumn, right? So Miller is identifying that when Christ came, he fulfilled the spring feasts. Because one of the feasts in the spring is the Passover, right? Because the spring is the first month is in the spring for the Jews. Ryan will go into that. But Passover was in the spring. And did Christ become the Passover lamb? Yes, so he fulfilled the spring feast, didn't he? Was he in the grave on the day when the Feast of Unleavened Bread was celebrated? Because the Feast of Unleavened Bread was the next feast after Passover. So Christ became the Passover when he's crucified. Therefore the Feast of Unleavened Bread is when he's resting in the Sabbath, in the grave. Then Christ was resurrected on the 16th day. Because Passover is 14, unleavened 15, 16 first fruits. Does Paul identify Christ as becoming the first fruits? Yes, Christ is the first fruits. So he fulfilled those. That's what Miller is saying. Right? But he's saying at his first advent he fulfilled these feasts. But at his second advent he's going to fulfill the autumn feast. And he's like, the Day of Atonement took place in the autumn. Because it was in the 7th month. And the 7th month is in the autumn. So Miller is identifying that. He knows that the Feast of Trumpets is taking place. He knows all this, right? And they believe in waiting for the Feast of Tabernacles. So what that's identifying for us is this. When you go to the next quotation, time is moving. This is from Damsteed's book, Foundations. There's a quote here. I have to read this entire quote. It says, from Ezra 7, 8 and 9, we learn that Ezra began to go up from Jerusalem on the first day of the first month, and arrived at Jerusalem on the first day of the fifth month. And in the 7th year of Artaxerxes, BC 457, having arrived at Jerusalem, he appointed magistrates, judges, and restored the Jewish commonwealth under the protection of the king of Persia. Well, remember what Brother Tindar was saying? The Jews were being favored by the Persians, right? That's key. As he was fully authorized to do by the decree of Artaxerxes. This necessarily required some little time, and brings us to the point when the restoring having been effected, the building of the streets and the wall commenced. The 70 weeks are divided into 3 parts: 7 weeks, 62 weeks, and 1 week. And then he gives a reference. The connection shows that the 7 weeks were allotted to the building of the streets and the wall. They therefore commenced when they began to build in the autumn of BC 457, that from that point 2300 reaches to the autumn of the year 1844. Basically what he's saying is this. He's identifying that from an understanding of Ezra 7:9, they're able to locate when the 2300 days actually begins. Just from understanding Ezra 7:9. And his logic is this. If Ezra leaves Babylon on the first day of the first month, and then he gets to Jerusalem on the first day of the fifth month, right? You're only left with 2 months up until you get to the 7th month. So he's identifying that when Ezra gets to Jerusalem, 2 months later, he now begins the work. And the 2300 is to be reckoned from the point when the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem goes forth, which is contextually the 3rd decree, which went into place in the 7th month, right? In the 7th month. So that's what this is identifying. So this is basically, he's quoting from Samuel Snow. So Samuel Snow, he's coming up with the midnight cry message. But Samuel Snow's message is identifying the termination of the 2300 in the autumn. But who first identified the termination of the 2300 in the autumn? Miller. So Snow's message is not independent of whose message? Miller's message is just bringing Miller's message to perfection. The message that's opened up to the Millerites here at the time of the end, I'm saying the 2300. But when it's opened up to Miller, does Miller have every fine detail? No. He doesn't. Who then comes and perfects that message? Samuel Snow. Samuel Snow then says, look, I now know the specific date when the Lord is going to come. Miller didn't, right? But Samuel Snow perfects Miller's message. And when Samuel Snow does that, he is perfecting the message that's been opened up, right? And we're saying that at the time of the end, Christ begins to remove 7 seals, right? So if the 2300 is opened up here at the time of the end, it means it's seal number what? 1. It's the first seal, right? But what's the character of Christ? Remember, Brother, today I was saying, Jesus illustrates what? The end with the beginning. So if the first seal is an unfolding of the message of the 2300, what should be the 7th seal? An unfolding of the message of the 2300, because Jesus illustrates the end with the beginning. The beginning is the 2300, then the end has to be the 2300. That's why Samuel Snow comes here and is perfecting the message. He now knows the message in its entirety. The seal is perfectly opened up, right? But it's a perfection of the message that's been opened at the time of the end. Now, when is the shut door for the Millerites? 22 October. But Samuel Snow, he begins to understand it in like February. But he begins to give it publicly, I think in May, right? He begins to, I think in May, it was in May, yeah, right. But he gives it at the Boston Tabernacle, which was on July 21, right? This is what they identified to be midnight, right? Snow gives it now, he goes into the people and he says, you know, and he tells them the message at Boston on July 21. And then he repeats it again at the midnight cry camp at the Exeter camp meeting, right? On August 15. But this message was opened up. Was it opened up on October 22 or before? Before. So the complete message has to be opened before the shut door, right? Now, when we come to our time, if these 7 seals repeat, of which they do, and we've shown, right? It means that if there's a message that's going to be opened up, it has to be opened before the what? The shut door, which means we need to identify our what? Our shut door, right? We need to identify when our door shuts. Before our door shuts, there's a message opened up. But that message is opened just before the door shuts. Because here Samuel Snow's message is opened up, like, I'm not time setting, but in that history, it was opened up the same year the door shut. That's when he gave it publicly. So I'm not saying if it's opened up, it's in the same year for us. It could be, based on God's providence, but not because we're time setting, right? Only God knows. We just need to pray. Now let's go to Daniel. Yes, you can read, please.
Okay. Yes. Verse 40. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and horsemen and many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over.
Okay, so here there's something that's identified to us. The time of the end, right? And the characteristics of the time of the end is this. The king of the south pushes at the king of the north, right? And the word push means to wage war. So the characteristics of the time of the end is that there's a war between north and south. But the south is the one in the ascendancy. So we need to know what north is and we need to know what south is, right? We have principles. I'm sure 99% of the people in here know these principles. Before the cross, literal. After the cross, spiritual. Simple example of this is this. When you get to the cross, are the Jews divorced by Christ? The divorce of the Jews is progressive, right? When you get to the stoning of Stephen, yeah. But Sister White has quotes where she says, when they crucified Christ, they were divorced. So at this point onwards, God is like progressively divorcing the Jews, whilst He's entering into a progressive phase of now preparing to bring in the Gentiles, right? And at this stage here, the Jews are rejecting Christ. And God is now beginning to set up a work of bringing in the Gentiles. And who then become the Jews from that point? The Christians, right? When you read Paul in the book of Romans chapter 2, you can read it in your spare time. Go to Romans chapter 2, study the book of Galatians. Paul says one is not a Jew who's one outwardly, but one inwardly. Right? Remember, Brother Tanai spoke about how we are spiritual children of Abraham. Was Abraham a Jew? Yes, he was a Jew, right? Like he was a Jew. Yes, I know Jacob was born by Abraham, but I'll give you a simple example. When in the Bible, does it not say Levi paid tithes in the loins of Abraham? It's identifying Levi as the one doing it, right? So if Jacob is in the loins of Abraham and Jacob is Israel, then who's Abraham? It's Israel, right? So yeah, that's Israel. We're spiritual Jews because we have the faith of Abraham, right? So we are spiritual Jews. When you get to this point here, Sister White's quotation where she says that we need not look to literal Jerusalem anymore, right? And she says that God's Seventh-day Adventist Church, when you're looking at it in this time, is the Jews, etc. But at that point onwards, the Jews are not literal people. Now, when you study in prophecy, the power, the king of the north, south, whatever, west or east, was determined by the location of God's people, the Jews, right? You have a campus here. And you have, you have north, you have south, you have west, you have east. The Jews are in the middle, right? The Jews are in the middle. Based on the location of God's people, you will determine who's north and who's south, right? Babylon was in the north. Egypt was in the south. Like, I know there's many proof texts for that, but if you go into the notes, you see those things, right? 1, 2. Babylon was in the north, Egypt was in the south, right? So the king of the north is determined by the location of God's people, their literal location, right? Babylon, Assyria, and them were in the north, Egypt is in the south, right? So if the Jews are no longer a literal people, what does that do for Babylon and Egypt? You can't take them literally anymore because you have a prophetic problem there where you are being told that at the time of the end, which is 1798, which is way after the cross, there's going to be a king of the north and a king of the south. And you as a student of prophecy know that the Jews are no longer literal people. Therefore, you need to know, how am I going to know who's north and south now? Because that literal geographical obstacle has been removed. Therefore, you're forced to treat Babylon and Egypt how? Spiritually. Revelation chapter 11, it says our Lord was crucified where? In Sodom and Egypt. But it actually says in the place spiritually called Sodom in Egypt. Right? And based on that context, remember, Brother, tonight's presentation, who was Sodom in Egypt, from what he said?
France.
It was atheistic France. So atheistic France, because it's Egypt, is the king of the south. Right? And the king of the north, if you read Revelation chapter 17, it talks about a mystery woman who's drunk with the blood of the saints, and upon her forehead is written the name what? Mystery Babylon. But who's that woman? Is Adventist, we know her. It's the papacy, right? But is the papacy in literal Turkey?
No.
Is the papacy seated in Turkey? Because Turkey is where you used to have Babylon. Right? It's not, right? You already know. Sister White identifies the city of Rome. So you already know that's spiritual. Right? You already know. And based on the context as well. So the papacy is Babylon. Right? And the king of the south is an atheistic power. In this case, France. So when you get to the time of the end, you are to expect to see atheistic France. Because the time of the end, based on this context, is, Sister White says it clearly, it's 1798. Right? And in 1798, did you see atheistic France warring against the papacy? Yes. This is when Napoleon sends General Berthier to take the Pope what? Captive, right? So the king of the south pushes at the king of the north. But then if you look at that passage clearly, it identifies something. There's a grammatical emphasis that's placed. You have a phrase, at the time of the end, right? And that phrase, at the time of the end, encapsulates or covers the whole detail in verse 40, right? It's governed by one phrase, at the time of the end. Now, it says this. It's split into two parts. Let me say this. At the time of the end, when you see the word at, what do you see? What do you understand? A specific point in time, right? It's like if I tell someone, I'm going to come and visit you in 30 minutes. Whereas if I say I'm going to come to your house at 12, there's a difference grammatically, isn't there? In 30 minutes is identifying a period. At is identifying a specific point. So when you're seeing that grammatical expression at the time of the end, you're forced to treat it as a point in history where something takes place. So at the time of the end, something happens. South pushes at north, which is 1798, right? Because you have an atheistic power delivering the deadly wound. But then, if you read the next part of that verse, and then it says, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind. Grammatically, it's still it's still at the time of the end. Do we see that in the verse? Grammatically, there's no logical break for you to treat it not as the time of the end. At the time of the end shall the king of the south do this, and the king of the north shall do this, which is encapsulated by that phrase, at the time of the end. So now as a student of prophecy, you use Miller's rules, right? Those are those who engage in the proclamation of the third angel's message will be still studying the Bible upon the same plan that who? Father Miller adopted. Miller's rules tells you that to know whether you have the specific fulfillment of a prophecy, right? After the figures, I think we need to read that. Rule number 11. Does anyone have the rules on a thing close by? Yes, please someone read rule 11. Is it 11? The one to know whether you have the true historical event for the fulfillment of the prophecy. It's 13. Yeah, please read 13.
To know whether we have the true historical event for the fulfillment of the prophecy, if you find every word of the prophecy after the figures are understood is literally fulfilled, then you may know that you have reached the true event. But if one lacks a fulfillment, then you must look for another event or wait its future development. For God takes care that history and prophecy don't agree, so that the true believing children of God may never be ashamed. Okay, so you have two options, right, according to Miller. One, you discard the event, right? You look at the prophetic passage and you see, no, this is not a fulfillment of the prophecy. Or option number two, you await. It means that that prophecy is true, but it's still in the process of being developed, right? So you need to know which route to take, right? When you get to, does Sister White endorse 1798 as the time of the end? Yes. Do we believe in the spirit of prophecy? Yes. So it's established, right? So you already know that Daniel 11:40 is fulfilled at the time of the end. Therefore, Daniel 11:40, that whole verse, has got divine endorsement on it.
Therefore, whatever takes place in Daniel 11:40 cannot be discarded. But you have a problem when you get to that verse. You are seeing that there's a point in time when the king of the north retaliates against the king of the south. And he brings with him chariots, horsemen, and ships. Right? We could get into those symbols, but we're not doing it. People can read this in the notes. But chariots represent what? When you run chariots in the Bible, chariots. Military might, right? Military might. Chariots represent military might. What do ships represent? Economic might, right? In the book of Psalm 107, we're told that those that go down into the sea and do business in great ships, right? It represents economic might. So therefore, there's a point in time where you are seeing the king of the north retaliating against the king of the south using economic and military might, right? And the king of the north is the papacy. Rome never changes, right? It's the papacy. So in 1798, because the phrase "at the time of the end" forces you to either treat it as 1798 or look for a future time of the end, as we have shown from the quotations of Sister White, that she had told us that there has to be a future time of the end. That's what we're building upon in the first segment, right? So do you see in 1798, because the phrase "at" forces you to treat it at a point in time. Do you see in 1798 the king of the north, the papacy, retaliating using economic and military might? No. There's no such event in history. It's not there, right? So it means that you are, according to Miller, you are to await its future development. And Sister White has already told us that there's going to be a future application of the time of the end. Therefore, now you need to look at the characteristics, right? Did France remain an atheistic nation? No. It didn't, right? France restored the Christian religion into its constitution. But when you get into, and France is Egypt, according to Ezekiel 29, verses 1 and 2. Egypt is the dragon. And what are one of the characteristics of the dragon that we know?
Changes.
Yeah, it changes, but wherever you see a dragon being manifest, it brings revolution. Right? When the dragon is moving, when it comes to atheistic France, what was going on in this time period? The French Revolution, right? The French Revolution is one of the characteristics of the dragon, because Egypt is the dragon. So when you're going to trace the dragon power in history, one of the things that you're going to look for is a revolutionary activity, right? But France, we know that it didn't remain an atheistic nation. But the Bible still says there's going to be a war between North and South. And you're forced to not see it in 1798. Therefore, you need to look in the future where you see an atheistic power warring against the papacy, right? And you see that when you get to the 1900s, right? The 20th century, the early 20th century, Russia begins to adopt an atheistic type of government, which they call communism, right? They adopt communism into their constitution, right? And when Russia does this, what happened immediately under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin? The Bolshevik revolution. When the dragon moves through history, you see revolution. Now Russia adopts an atheistic type of government, and then they end up forming what you call the USSR, right? Which is the Soviet Union. The USSR is a coming together of countries, right? Under the leadership of Russia, right? So contextually, who's the king of the South? Contextually, it has to be Russia, right? Contextually, it has to be Russia. Because Russia is the one that adopts atheism. And the king of the South is an atheistic power. And it then has a territory. If you study the book of Daniel chapter 11, you always have a power, north or south. But that power has a capital. But that power also has territory, right? It has territory. So the territory is not necessarily the king. At one level it is, but specifically the king is where you find, the kingdom is where you find the king, right? Where the king is seated, right? Contextually, so Russia there is the king of the South. Then, when you are running through that verse, one of the things that you are seeing is this. It's talking about the king of the north, papacy, now retaliating against atheism, right? With chariots and ships and horsemen. Let's go to Revelation chapter 13. We need to, because Rome never changes, and the principles of God's dealings with men are ever the same. If you're going to see Rome using chariots and horsemen in the future, Rome has used those same chariots and horsemen in the past. Right? Revelation chapter 13, verse 13. Yeah. Let's start from verse 16. It says this, and he causeth all. Contextually, who's this he? It's the earth beast, right? The United States. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that hath the mark. If you can't buy or sell, what's that? Economic, that's ships, right? Isn't that ships? Economic, right? So the United States is doing this work. Save he that hath the mark or the number of the beast. I'm looking for it says kills. Yes, verse 15. And he, the United States, had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. When you are killing, what are you using? Military might. So the United States is characterized by its use of economic and military might. And when the United States is doing this, what is it causing the world to worship? The beast. Who's the beast? The papacy. So in Daniel 11:14, when the beast is coming with economics, with ships and horsemen, who are the ships and horsemen? It's the armies of Rome, the United States, right? And you can show that in history, because in the time period in the 1800s there, Ronald Reagan becomes president of the United States in 1981, right? And then he enters into a secret alliance with the Pope, right? And from that point onwards, he pledges to use the United States' economic and military might to bring down the Soviet Union. That's a historical fact. Prophecy is fulfilled where? In history, right? So you're seeing this as a historical fact. So when Ronald Reagan is doing this, they're now beginning to wage a war against communism, and they're pushing for the fall of the king of the South, right? And you've already identified that the king of the South here is Russia, right? The Soviet Union. Now, let's go back to Daniel 11:40. I know time is just going. There's some key things that we need to note. I think some key symbols. One of those symbols is this. If you look at that word, like a whirlwind, if you look at it in your Strongs or in your Eastwood, that word actually means to ascend. No, the word come against means to ascend. When it says it shall come against him like a whirlwind, that word come against means to ascend. So this, whoever this king of the north is, which is the papacy, is a power that ascends. Right? It's a power that ascends. When you go to Revelation chapter 17, it tells us about kings, right? And it says 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is yet to come, right? And when he shall come, he shall continue a short space. And it talks about the 8th. And it says that the 8th shall ascend and go into perdition. So there's an 8th, and it's called the beast that was, shall ascend. Who's the beast? The papacy is the beast, right? Revelation chapter 13. And the papacy is the beast. And it says this beast shall ascend. So one of the characteristics of the king of the north is that it's a power that ascends. When you study Isaiah chapter 14, when Sister White is commenting on the papacy, she says this. She says the papacy is a representative of Satan. Right? She says it. She says that the Antichrist is determined to carry out the rebellion he began in heaven, on earth. Question, was the papacy in heaven? No. But there's a person called Antichrist who was in heaven. Who's that? Satan. But in another passage it says that the papacy is a representative of Satan. When you look at Isaiah chapter 14, Satan, when he's Lucifer, he's exalting himself, isn't he? So he's magnifying himself, which is something we need to take note of. And when he's magnifying himself, what does he want to take from the Lord? He wants to sit on God's throne and in the sides of the north. So the rebellion of Satan has always been about trying to be the king of the north. And in Isaiah chapter 14, one of the things that Satan is saying, they said, I want to ascend. That's what it says in Isaiah 14. So the power of the Antichrist, it's a power that ascends. And it's ascending, it's characterized with being seated in the north. Right? So you're seeing that the papacy here positionally has to fit. Then when you look at this, so I just want to do the last portion and stuff, and then close up to verse 41. And then we'll take it up from there tomorrow. I hope I'm not moving too fast. Or anyone. Right? Okay. So when you go back to chapter 40, there's something that's mentioned. It says that he, the king of the north, shall enter into the Countries. So whoever the king of the south here is, it's a power that controls what? Countries. Is France a countries? No, it's a country in the singular. So you rule that out, right? So one of the characteristics of the king of the south is that it's a power that's in control of countries. Was the Soviet Union a power that was made up of countries? Yes, the Soviet bloc, right? But here it says he shall enter into the countries. Let's keep that in mind for the future presentations, right? He enters where? Into the countries, right? Into the countries. And when he does that, it says that he shall what? Overflow and pass over, right? He shall overflow and pass over. And it's identifying a sweeping away, right? Did the papacy sweep away through the countries of the Soviet Union? Yes. This is what you call the revolutions of 1989. Part of what led to the collapse of the Soviet Union, right? There were revolutions. When the papacy, what's happening here is that the people are sick and tired of a communist government, right? And Pope John Paul II, he was a native from Poland, right? Yes. And the Polish people are sick and tired of this whole communist setup. And the papacy goes into Poland, right? That's how you pronounce it. The name makes it. Poland, right? Poland. So he enters into Poland, right? And he incites what you call the Solidarity Movement, which was labor unions. They were seeking to break loose from the communist government. Because communism, when you look at the definition of communism, is that it's a strong centralized government. By centralized, I mean this. The state owns everything, right? And they do a work of what you call redistribution. But the state controls everything. It's a strong state government. But one of the things about the papacy is that it can't afford to have the communists do that because they want to own everything, right? So they will have to weaken that. It's a three-way struggle between three powers, right? Capitalism, Catholicism, and communism, right? Something like that. But when you get into this history, this is what's happening. The papacy enters, and then when he does this, he causes a sweeping through of a revolutionary activity where the countries of the Soviet Union are now seeking for freedom from the papacy. They want their liberty, right? Because the communist government is definitely failing. There have been famines, there have been hungers and stuff. So now this whole thing is spreading throughout the Soviet bloc into like a wave of revolutions. This is what you call the revolutions of 1989 or autumn revolutions if you look it up from the historians. So when this is happening, one of the things that happens in the Soviet Union is that there's a new leader that's set up, right? Part of what catalyzed the fall of the Soviet Union was the rise of a new leader. Who's that new leader? Mikhail Gorbachev. And Mikhail Gorbachev uses two principles, right? Who knows those two principles that he began to use?
Glasnost.
Glasnost, and
Perestroika.
Perestroika. We want to define them now. And perestroika. Perestroika. Glasnost is which one is restructuring? One is openness, the other is restructuring. Let me check in here. The other is restructuring, the other is openness, and we will define what it means. Let me just say this. Perestroika. Okay, I've got it here. Perestroika is restructuring, glasnost is openness. Yes. So perestroika, what he's doing here, Gorbachev he's weakening, he's restructuring the government. And when he's restructuring the government, he's causing the fall of the Soviet Union, right? Because he's now decentralizing the power. Remember, communism is a power that operates upon centralization of power, right? It was a one-party thing, right? Government. It was just the Communist Party. So Gorbachev is now restructuring and is weakening the centralized power, and is now decentralizing, right? Which is weakening communism. And when he's doing that, he's using capitalist principles, which are opposite to communist principles, right? And then he's also using what you call glasnost, which is openness. In that, he's allowing free talk, free criticism of the government, right? He's allowing free press. You can go on radio, you can criticize the government, right? And basically, if you are criticizing the government and you're allowed, it's spreading what you call disaffection, right? And the people are saying, yeah, this people have a point, this government is weak. We need to break free, right? So he's weakening the Soviet Union. when he's doing this, through these two principles, whilst the Pope is also doing his activities there, right? I'm about to bind this off, right? So these two principles are used, which ultimately contribute to the fall of the Soviet Union, right? The Soviet Union falls because of these two principles and the other things that were being employed. So when you get to like 1989, you're at a point where the Soviet Union is open, and the Catholics are now allowed to come in and take positions in the government, right? The papacy is now entered into, it's entered into the countries. It began with the revolutions, but now you have Catholics retaking their position in the communist government. The papacy is now reclaiming its territory, right, in the Soviet Union. Now, tomorrow we hope to pick it up from verse 41. I pray by God's grace we can finish these presentations to get to where we want to go. But when we just want to open verse 41, we're not going to go into the depths of the symbols. But when you get to verse 41, there's something that's key to note. The reason why I'm going through this is material over this can be found, right? If we get the books, The King of the North and stuff, and I know most of us are up to speed on this revision for most of us. There's a couple of new people. We pray by God's grace we can help them. So, verse 41 says this. Someone to read verse 41.
Verse 41.
Yes.
And he shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab and the chief of the children of Ammon.
So there's a phrase, he shall enter also into the glorious land. It's showing you that the same person who entered into the countries is the same person who's entering also into the glorious land. So it's still the king of the north. We're saying it, huh? But that word also, it can identify, I've done this, I'm also doing this, right? But at another level, it means in a similar way. If you look it up if you look up the word also from the Webster's, right? It means in a similar way. In a way similar to how? How we done it before, which is before? South. Verse 40, right? When he entered into the Soviet Union, he's going to enter the United States in a similar way. How did he enter into the Soviet Union?
Using horsemen, chariots,
Horsemen, chariots, and many ships. How is the United States going to fall? It's going to hang itself, isn't it? It's going to use economic and military might to suppress its own country, right? Isn't it? When you look at Revelation chapter 13, doesn't the United States pass a Sunday law in its own country? Does it employ economic and military might to suppress its own country? They commit suicide. Sister White says national apostasy will be followed by national ruin. Right? So he uses the United States to destroy the United States. That's what you call like a self-inflicted wound. But it also means that how he entered through revolution in 1989 is how he's going to enter the United States. So you know that part of what's going to be happening at the Sunday law, we haven't shown that the glorious land is the United States. But at the Sunday law, you're going to be having revolutionary activity in the United States. You're going to be having revolutionary activity because it has been typified. And there's also going to be a restructuring of the government. My last point is this. It's a question, say something about it. Does John typify Elijah? Does Elijah typify John?
Yes.
He does. So therefore is John similar to Elijah? They're similar, right? They typify one another. But did John die?
Yes.
John is Elijah, but did he die?
Yes.
Christ calls John Elijah, doesn't he?
Yes.
But he died. Did Elijah die?
No.
So typifications can be fulfilled even in opposites, can't they? Three kings destroyed Judah from what Tendai was saying, and did Joachim, Joachim, and Zedekiah. But how many kings restored Judah? Three. But both these three kings are typifying three angels' messages, aren't they? But one is emphasizing a destruction, one is emphasizing a restoration. So same principle can be repeated in opposites. So when he entered into the Soviet Union, it was through a what of the government? Decentralizing of power, right? Decentralizing of power. But when he enters into the glorious land, it's going to be the opposite. There's going to be a centralizing of wealth and power, of wealth and power. When you're going to read other verses like verse 42, it tells you that he shall have power over the precious things of gold and silver, right? And one of the things that we hope to get into is Joseph, right? Didn't I say Joseph is a tool on power? Did he mention it, right? Joseph is a tool on power. And Joseph is doing a work for Pharaoh, king of Egypt. But we know that Pharaoh was identified as the sun god, right? In Egyptian culture, right? So at one level we can typify the papacy. And when Joseph is doing this, there's a famine in the land. What does Joseph begin to do to the economy? And one power begins to centralize, and he gives the power to Pharaoh. So Pharaoh has the control over the precious things of Egypt, right? So there's a centralized government. In order for you to pass the Sunday law, the United States has to weaken states' rights. Do you know that the United States operates on strong state governments, right? Where you have independent states that can say, okay, they've passed this law, we don't like it, right? But in the Sunday law, if it's going to have to cause all, it means that those state governments have to come under the control of the federal government, which is the head government. So there's going to be a restructuring at the Sunday law in the United States, right? Which is an opposite. So we hope to pick it up from there. But last point. In 1989, in the Soviet Union in Poland, they elected a president for the first time. A Catholic president for the first time. And they hadn't had a president in 45 years. Right? Shall we pray?
In 45 years. Oh.
Blessed and Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to get into your word. I pray that you might give us the diligence of Bereans to go back and look into these things. We know that time fails us, but I pray, Lord, that we might fulfill our responsibility and test out these things and establish them for ourselves personally. I ask, oh Lord, for the presentations tomorrow, that we might come prepared to receive, and that we might move as you are leading us in the advancement. Thank you, blessed Redeemer. Be with each and every individual as they travel, and keep those even in this rain, Lord. Protect them. We thank you, merciful Savior, as the Sabbath hours is still upon us. May we still maintain the consecration. In Christ's name, Amen.
Amen.